This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. If I go missing, look for me in the lake. That's what Suzanne Simpson told her banker weeks before she vanished. And if that alone doesn't give you the chills, just wait. Because what followed was a series of events that reads like the script of a psychological thriller. A picture-perfect marriage, crumbling behind closed doors. A mother's haunting last words. A 5-year-old eyewitness, a missing body, and a husband whose truck slowly emptied itself of trash bags, cement, and a tarp, while his wife was nowhere to be found. This is not just a story about domestic violence or murder without a body. This is a story about what happens when a woman tries to leave and doesn't get the chance. I'm your host, Margot. This is Death by Southwest. And today we are heading to San Antonio, Texas to cover a case that is so shocking and also recent, it's still unfolding in court. This is the disappearance and presumed murder of Suzanne Simpson. Hi, guys. Trying something new with a little bit of like a cold open. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. If you have thoughts, let me know. I'm always open to your suggestions. I know we're a day late here. What is it saying? A day late and a dollar short. I am both of those things today. I did a whole episode this morning on Patreon about this, but I found out yesterday that my job with Jim, I am being replaced by a group of younger digital media guys who supposedly can do the same thing for a lot cheaper. I feel like I'm pretty cheap, but no, I'm not going to spend any time talking about it because I did talk about it on Patreon. So if you want to know more, or maybe another time, as we all know, I'm a broken record, but I am trying really hard to focus on true crime and not the ups and downs of my life so much. So that yesterday I found that out. I was blindsided, to say the least. And also yesterday Mark got a raise. So I wanted to just make the day and the evening about him and celebrate his big win, because that was very exciting and he's worked hard for that. So that's what I did. That's why the episode's not out. Well, that's why I'm recording it right now. There is my, I don't think too long-winded explanation. I'm going to say that instead of excuse. Let's get into our story. Before we get into the story, let's talk about where this story takes place, which is, I said San Antonio, but it's actually a place called Olmos Park. It's 4 miles north of downtown San Antonio. It's one of the city's most affluent and tightly knit neighborhoods, home to just over 2,200 residents. It's about a half a mile square enclave that was originally developed in the 1920s as like a haven of elegance and exclusivity. And that has not changed since then. Tree-lined streets, very manicured lawns, historic homes tucked behind old oak trees. It feels like a perfectly preserved slice of generational wealth and kind of suburban charm and perfection. The median household income is around $172,000 a year, and home values are well into the millions. It's the kind of place where you can walk your dog at night without worrying, wave to neighbors that you've known and your family has known for decades, and assume that nothing bad will ever happen here. Which is exactly why Suzanne Simpson's disappearance hit so hard. Because when someone vanishes from a neighborhood like Olmos Park, where everything looks perfect from the outside, people pay attention. So who was Suzanne Simpson? Before the headlines, the police reports, before the heartbreaking words associated with her name, missing, murder, there was just Suzanne, a 48-year-old, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a good friend, and one of those people you describe kind of as the quiet glue that holds everyone else together. She attended the Texas Military Institute, then graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in communications. While she was at UT Austin, she met her future husband, Brad Simpson. And this was a connection that would change her life in ways no one could have predicted. They married in 2002, building a life that from the outside looked picture perfect. A beautiful home in Olmos Park. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Four children, successful careers. Suzanne was a realtor with Nick's Realty, a luxury real estate company that was co owned by her sister in law, Marnie Simpson. And Brad originally, I believe, started working in property management and then moved into oil management. They both had good jobs. Everything looked perfect, but we know appearances are deceiving. Now, Suzanne's world, she was dedicated to her job, but her world really revolved around her children, and she had four of them, age 20, 18, 15, and 5. That's their ages at the time of our story, which is in 2024, so not that long ago. She poured her energy into raising the two youngest who were still living at home, though her heart really belonged to all four, no matter how old they got or how far away they lived. So the two older kids did not live at home. Her family describes her as the kind of mom who was always there, never missed a phone call, texted updates to her kids and her friends regularly, showed up for every recital, every appointment, every milestone. Her life was rooted in motherhood. And for Suzanne, that meant being present for her kids no matter what else was going on in her life. She was also very close with her sister Teresa and her mother Barbara, who described her as a woman with quiet strength, steady loyalty, and an unshakable devotion to her family. Being a mom to four kids, even if two of them aren't living at home, and also having a career in real estate, you can imagine Suzanne was a hustler. She was juggling house showings, homework, laundry, the whole thing, like so many people do. And Suzanne really tended to make it look pretty easy. Not flashy, just she was just dependable. She always got whatever needed to get done, she was getting it done. Now, behind the scenes, it wasn't quite that image that she portrayed. Those closest to Suzanne say that she was struggling in silence. She was trying to find her way out of a marriage that had grown toxic and potentially unsafe. And in the days before her disappearance, she had finally begun to speak up, to tell family and friends that something was wrong, that she needed help, that she was ready to leave. But she just never got the chance to leave. And that's where our story begins. Not with the disappearance, but with a woman who deserved to be heard, protected, and believed. Her name was Suzanne Simpson, and this is her story. October 6, 2024 started out like any other Sunday in the affluent neighborhood of Olmos Park. Suzanne Simpson, she's 51, I believe, at the time of our story. I'm not sure why I said 48 before. I think that was incorrect. Either way, Suzanne was getting ready for a night out. She and her husband, Brad, were headed to an event at the Argyle, which is a private members only supper club nestled in the lush hills of nearby Alamo Heights. Wasn't uncommon for them to attend fancy social events. They were, by all appearances, kind of like this power couple. Four kids, gorgeous house, both had successful careers in real estate and oil, plenty of, I hate the word clout, but I'll say it, clout in the neighborhood. But that night, something was just off. Suzanne had originally asked her mom, Barbara, to watch their youngest child, their 5-year-old daughter, so she and Brad could enjoy the night alone. But then she changed her mind and she decided to bring her daughter with them. Why? We don't know. And we may never know. Many believe that Suzanne had an inkling that something wrong was brewing beneath the surface that night. And she didn't want to leave her child behind. At the Argyle, Guests later on said the couple had a heated argument that was public enough that others did take notice. So around 8:30 p.m., Suzanne and her daughter left the party alone. They stopped at a nearby Heb grocery store. I don't know if you say HEB or Heb. I've never seen one or been to one. Um, I'm going to say Heb. So they stopped at a nearby Heb grocery store about 10 minutes from their house. Surveillance security cameras at the store caught them on camera between 8:40 and 8:51. And looking at the footage, you would have no idea that you are watching a woman who is hours away from disappearing without a trace. Around 9:15, Suzanne placed a call to a family friend, letting them know she was on her way to their house. And then while en route to this person's house, she made a second phone call to her mom, telling her mom that Brad had hit her. She said that Brad had assaulted her that night, hurting her back, her arm, and her neck. She sounded rattled to her mom, but not hysterical, just tired. Tired, tired in the kind of way that this is not the first time this happened. Like tired in the way that like here we go again, kind of tired. That call to her mother lasted 8 minutes. She arrived at her friend's house around 9:25 p.m., stayed a short while, and then returned home. By 10:22 p.m., Suzanne's 20-year-old daughter, Chandler, who lived in New York, saw Suzanne's location ping at home via the Find My Friends whatever app. And that 1022 ping at home showing that Suzanne got home would be the last digital trace of Suzanne's phone. Now, Brad's phone also went offline, but around 11 p.m., so about 40 minutes later, and it didn't come back on until the next day. But let's talk about Suzanne's phone. So Suzanne's phone was actually, obviously this was found out later, but deactivated. Not lost, not dead, but manually turned off from the AT&T account, suspended by someone who had access to the account. Who? Well, the only other person with access to the AT&T account was Brad Simpson. And pretty much just like that, Suzanne vanished. Now, apparently, there's a rule. I read about this while I was researching in true crime that you are always supposed to pay attention to the neighbors. They always know more than they think. And in Suzanne's case, this actually turned out to be true because one neighbor who lived across the street saw a lot that night of October 6th. Sometime between 10 and 11 p.m., Suzanne returned home and the neighbor heard shouting so loud that it sounded like it was right outside his window. He looked out and what he saw was disturbing. He saw Suzanne and Brad outside in a physical struggle in their front yard. Suzanne was very clearly trying to get away from Brad, and Brad kept grabbing her and dragging her back inside, trying to drag her back inside, but dragging her nonetheless. This neighbor is quoted as saying, Miss Simpson was attempting to get away from Mr. Simpson's grasp. He was clearly attempting to keep her from running away. And the neighbor watched Suzanne run away into the wooded area beside the home and Brad chasing after her. And then came the screams. 2, maybe 3 screams, panicked, high pitched, and then silence. So what did the neighbor do? Nothing. Nothing. He saw a man assaulting a woman in their front yard. And then he saw this man chase that woman and heard screaming. And he thought, they'll be fine. Didn't call the police, didn't go outside, go over to check, didn't call another neighbor to say, like, what should we do? Okay. He did eventually go out and look, but not immediately. But he says that he did get a flashlight. He went outside. He kind of like shined the flashlight around, see if he could see anything, didn't see anything, and then went back inside. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but I want to like scream at him. Why didn't you call someone? You don't have to. I fully believe that if there's some type of altercation, argument, fight, I'm not going to personally go get involved, but I 100% will call the police. Absolutely. Or call a neighbor, call somebody else who maybe would be more apt or more physically suited for getting involved. It's weird to me that this person didn't do that. I don't have the person's name. Um, and also to take a little bit of heat off the neighbor, you know, people freeze. They rationalize. Oh, it's just a marital fight. It looks worse than it was. I don't want to make things worse by getting the police involved, which I understand, you know. What if they come? They have to file a report, all this. Like, you never know. You don't want to cause more problems for somebody. But in this case, this neighbor should have done something. And that's impossible to know in the moment. So we're not going to blame them. Around midnight, that same neighbor saw Brad again, this time walking towards his GMC black Sierra truck that was parked outside. He drove off and then returned home about an hour or so later. He went to Heb grocery store. He didn't go to report Suzanne missing. He didn't go to ask for help because maybe things got out of hand. He just was out at the grocery store at midnight. Now, I would love to know what he bought, if anything, at the Heb. And I figure that information has got to be somewhere because of surveillance cameras. And I guess he could have paid in cash, but if he didn't pay in cash, then there should be an electronic receipt of that, right? I couldn't find what he bought, but I do know what was in the back of his truck that night. That detail is going to come later. And when investigators found out what was in his truck that night, it was chilling, to say the least. Now, by Monday morning, October 7th, Suzanne Simpson was about to be officially missing, but not because of Brad. No thanks to him going to the police. No thanks to the neighbor. Suzanne's friends were the first ones to kind of like sound the alarm. She wasn't answering their texts. She had missed a morning meeting. And for Suzanne, the most shocking thing that she missed was a hair appointment. That may sound silly, but Suzanne was a very polished, pulled together professional. She took time on her appearance. She would never record a podcast looking how I look right now with dirty hair, with pigtails, no makeup, and workout clothes. Sorry. um, she took pride in her appearance at all times. She did not leave the house or attend a meeting, an event, a dinner, anything without looking pretty flawless. So missing a hair appointment was not just suspicious for Suzanne. It was like unthinkable. She never missed it because she had darker hair and she was blonde. So she really had to keep up with it, which I am now learning. So by mid-afternoon, the unease that Suzanne wasn't answering text messages and had missed her hair appointment was quickly turning into panic. And when she didn't show up to pick up her 5-year-old daughter from school at 3 p.m., something that she had never, ever failed to do, the school called Brad, who arrived around 3:30 and claimed, he said, oh, I thought Suzanne was coming. Maybe I misunderstood. Here's what's weird though. At that point, so look, Brad knows he didn't misunderstand. It was Suzanne who was supposed to pick up their daughter. So when she doesn't and the school calls Brad, what would be the normal reaction? Like, I would think if I was supposed to pick up our child and I didn't, and the school called Mark, he would be then calling me. And if he couldn't get a hold of me, he'd be worried. Brad didn't seem worried, didn't report her missing still. So that night, one of Suzanne's friends called Brad directly and urged him to file a report. He brushed it off. He was casual about it, seemed not concerned. So she did it herself. She called police at 9:57 that night. 3 minutes later, at 10 p.m., Brad then decided to file a missing persons report. Do we think this is a coincidence? We do not. That that Brad filing a police report for a missing, excuse me, a missing persons report, that's the last time that Brad would participate in any part of this search for Suzanne. So as Suzanne is now officially reported missing, family and friends are mobilizing, printing flyers, searching neighborhoods. Not Brad. On Tuesday, October 8th, the day after Suzanne was reported missing, Brad was supposed to go in and speak with investigators. He did not. He just didn't show up. Instead, he kind of fled. He went to the couple's second property in Bandera County, about an hour outside of San Antonio, kind of a ranch property. And he brought a laptop and three cell phones. And very quickly upon arriving at the ranch, he began to burn all of those things. Now, when people talk about a witness to a crime, or sometimes there's only one witness to a crime, you know, it can be anybody, of course, but oftentimes it's a neighbor, a bystander, maybe even a surveillance camera. In this case, with Suzanne, the only person who saw what happened inside the Simpson house that night was 5 years old. So, 2 days after Suzanne disappeared, her youngest daughter, who was in kindergarten, sat down with a school counselor and did what many adults in this same situation couldn't bring themselves to do. She told the truth about what she saw. She said that her father had pushed her mom against a wall, hit her face, hurt her elbow, and then took her mom's phone away. Now, she's 5. She doesn't necessarily understand what she's seeing, but she saw it, and she is reiterating it very clearly. This alone is pretty upsetting for anyone, certainly a child and her watching her parents. But what made this worse for investigators was that this was a pattern. Suzanne, sorry, Suzanne had told multiple people that Brad routinely took her phone away to punish her. That was like how he tried to control her. In fact, investigators found that Brad accessed their AT&T account and suspended her phone service right after the dinner party that night, despite later telling police, when he eventually did have to speak to police at some point, he said she must have lost her phone at Heb when she went to Heb with the daughter. That didn't match phone records, and that wasn't even possible because Suzanne had made phone calls after leaving the store. Remember, she called her friend and she called her mom. And the eldest daughter saw Suzanne's phone ping at home at 10:22. Now look, just because Suzanne's phone pinged at the house at 10:22 does not mean that Suzanne was there. We all know that. But she did make those phone calls. And those were around what, 9:25, 9:30. So she didn't lose her phone. Brad suspended her phone service. So Brad cut her off, digitally. And at this point, we're thinking physically. So investigators now had a witness statement contradicting evidence because Brad's saying she lost her phone and they know that's not true. And they have a husband who's acting like anything but a grieving spouse. So they moved pretty quickly. On October 9th, just 3 days after Suzanne vanished, Brad Simpson was arrested at the Bandera Ranch. The charges: family violence, unlawful restraint. But what they found on the property would take this case to the next level. Now, when police arrested Brad, he didn't look surprised. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask if his wife was okay. He didn't ask where she was. Instead, he stood there, stone-faced, with fresh bruises and cuts on his arms and hands that looked like defensive wounds to investigators. And he just let them arrest him. Which, what are you going to do? He's not going to fight back. Also, come on. I don't know. And I do like to always preface this. I don't know how I would react in any of these god-awful situations that I share in these cases. I have no idea. if my parent, sister, loved one, Mark, I don't know. And so I understand to a certain degree that there is no right way or normal way to react to your wife going missing and to being arrested for your potential involvement in that. And I fully believe that nothing should be said to police without a lawyer present. However, this seems weird. This is just weird behavior. It seems like there should be some reaction, something more from this guy. And then, if this wasn't weird enough, came the discoveries. So many discoveries. At the Bandera property, officers found a burn pit that was still smoldering and smoking. And inside of it, they found a laptop and three cell phones, and then a stack of additional electronics that were all pretty partially badly melted. That all apparently belonged to Brad, who was very clearly trying to erase something. But what? That question would be answered by what they recovered and what he failed to destroy. Because on a separate device, one that had not been burned, investigators found two digital notes. The first was titled "This Next Life," and the next note was titled "Last Will and Testament." And inside that second note, that second document, was a line that stopped everyone cold. It said, "I'm sorry for assaulting Suzanne on August 2023 and again on October 6th, which was the night she disappeared." So let's just let that sink in a second. He admitted in writing that he assaulted her the same night that she vanished, and she hasn't been seen since. Not looking good for Brad, but it didn't stop there. When police searched the San Antonio home, they found a dent in the wall at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't small. It looked like someone's head slash shoulder, some part of a body had been thrown into the wall, is what they believed it looked like. They also recovered a box of heavy duty trash bags matched to the exact ones that Brad had purchased the morning after Suzanne vanished. Apparently, so this is what I was saying earlier, although I don't think it's from that night. The next day, I think, surveillance cameras caught him loading bags, a tarp, and a cooler into his truck. And then those items, by the end of the day, slowly began to disappear from the truck bed. I believe we have more on that in a little bit later. But there was one final discovery that changed everything. In a hidden compartment tucked away at the home, police found a motorized reciprocating saw. And on it, Suzanne's DNA. Now, there's no body, no clear confession. He's only confessed to assaulting her, but no confession of murder. But this was, to investigators, this felt like pretty chilling proof that something unfortunate had happened to Suzanne Simpson. Now, before we dive into the aftermath of Brad's arrest, we're going to rewind to the morning of October 7th. So this is the day after Suzanne was last seen. She was seen the night before. Her phone pinged at 10:22. We're now at the next morning, because now he's been arrested. So they're now kind of putting the pieces together, which they weren't on October 7th when we talked about October 7th. I don't know why I over-explained that. Excuse me. So this is when, October 7th is when Brad's actions, as they learned them after the fact, really began to paint a chilling picture of what might have happened, in addition to premeditation and concealment. So we're back at Monday morning, October 7th. It's been less than 12 hours since Suzanne was last seen. And her friends at this point are calling, texting, really starting to worry about where she is. Brad Simpson, her husband, he's out running errands. He drops his 5-year-old daughter off at school, same as always. But surveillance footage of his GMC Sierra captured something that wasn't part of his usual drop-off routine. two large white trash bags, a cooler, a gray trash can, a large wrapped bulky object in a blue tarp, and on top of all of these items in the back of his truck, a metal firewood rack to like weigh and keep everything down. And yes, all of this was in the back of his truck while he was taking his daughter to school. After drop off, Brad drove north to a place called Bourne, Texas. It's spelled Boerne. At 9:12 a.m., surveillance cameras captured him at a Whataburger drive-thru, ordering breakfast with trash bags and a large bulky object wrapped in a tarp still in his truck bed. Moments later at 9:53 a.m., Brad pulled into Home Depot. And what he bought was, it's essentially like a serial killer starter pack, we could call it. 2 bags of cement, disinfectant spray, insect repellent, a bucket with a lid, and a new box of heavy-duty trash bags. He paid in cash. Then he walked into the parking lot and asked a stranger for directions to the nearest dump. At this point, Brad turned off his phone again. Remember, he turned it off the night before. So he's trying to disappear digitally. Unfortunately for Brad, his truck and all the cameras in life that watch us constantly weren't going to let him disappear that easily. So a license plate reader caught him headed west toward the Kendall County solid waste site. And by the time he pulled into a Valero gas station around 11:15 a.m., the trash bags from the back of his truck were gone. Now, the cooler, the tarp, the trash can, and the firewood rack apparently were still there, but the bags were no longer in the back of his truck. He bought 2 gallons of water. This is at the Valero gas station, changed from sandals into cowboy boots, and kept driving toward the couple's Bandera property. By 1:41 p.m., his truck was caught on camera again, this time headed back to San Antonio. But now the tarp was gone, the firewood rack had been removed, and the trash can was at the very least no longer visible if it was still in there. By the time Brad picked up his daughter at 3:30 p.m., only the cooler remained in the truck. And after that, after he picked up his daughter, because remember, Suzanne was supposed to, school called Brad. Brad showed up at 3:30. At 4:07 p.m., Brad went to a car wash, and he was seen scrubbing cement splatter from the back of his truck. Remember, he bought cement that morning, and now he's cleaning up a cement mess. The craziest part is at this point still, so this is the next day, Suzanne has not been reported missing by him. I think we all know why. So that was October 7th. 2 days later, after a trail of lies, all this surveillance footage, and mounting pressure, we know that Brad Simpson was arrested on the 9th. And by the very next day, on the 10th, just 4 days after Suzanne vanished, the case was already spiraling into something far darker than anyone could have imagined, because Brad wasn't just suspicious. His picture perfect, I'm not worried image was like falling apart and unraveling. So let's start with the gun. During a post-arrest search of the Bandera Ranch, and I'm going to talk more about these searches and why they occurred when they did in a minute. So he's been arrested. They do another search of the ranch, and they discover a modified AK-47 hidden inside the wall of a pump house. Not in a closet, not under the bed, inside a wall. How did it get there? Well, enter James Cotter, Brad's longtime friend and former business partner, and now kind of like a co-star in this entire criminal enterprise situation that Brad has found himself in. So according to text messages found on Brad's phone on October 8th, one day after he reported Suzanne missing, he texted James, "If you're in Bandera, can you haul ass and meet me at your house? I don't have much time." And then Make sure and leave all that shit in the pump house, especially the gun. James replied, I won't tell anyone. You're my brother. This is not just helping out a friend at this point. This could be construed as tampering with evidence. And yes, James was eventually arrested and charged. But let's get back to Brad because this is where the timeline of horror starts kind of overlapping with proof of intent. So, you know, those digital notes I mentioned on Brad's phone, I didn't tell you much about them. There was last will and testament. He admitted to assaulting Suzanne twice. And then there was another note titled This Next Life. And we don't know exactly what it said because it has not been made public, but law enforcement described both notes as deeply incriminating, and they suggested a plan to flee, die by suicide, or stage a disappearance. So while Brad sat in jail, the evidence of what he'd done was still sitting right out in the open. Because on October 23rd, nearly 2 weeks after his arrest, police conducted another search of the Simpson home. And what they found felt like kind of like that final little bit of confirmation that they needed. I feel like at this point they have a lot, but they found a box of heavy duty trash bags, a partially used bag of cement, a trash can, and the metal firewood rack, the same one that was in the back of his truck weighing down the tarp and all the other stuff in his truck. Every part of this puzzle was right there. So everything that he didn't either burn or dump was right there at the property. Unfortunately, the most damning piece of this case was still missing, and that was Suzanne. Now, when I was researching this, I thought, why didn't they find those things during the first search? Or I think there was two, the second search of the homes. So the first search of the Simpson home took place shortly after Brad reported Suzanne missing, likely on or around October 9th, the same day that he was arrested. But here's the thing, at this point, they are not thinking it's a murder investigation yet. They haven't like seen all this surveillance of him getting trash bags and a giant thing in the back of his truck and whatnot. So she's a missing person. It's only been a day or two. She's classified as a missing person, not a homicide victim. So basically, what that means is that police have conducted a limited consent based search. Likely Brad let them in, which is apparently pretty standard in early missing persons cases. So they were probably looking for things that maybe she left behind voluntarily, seeing if anything felt weird at the house, but not necessarily tearing the house apart. By the time they returned to investigate, to search the house again, excuse me, on October 23rd, this is 2 weeks after she's been missing and Brad has now been arrested. Now they have surveillance footage. They have the eyewitness account from the 5-year-old daughter. They have Brad's typed confession of assault. They have his purchase records for cement, tarps, and trash bags. And as each day passes, they have a deepening belief, that Suzanne is sadly and unfortunately and likely not coming back. So the second search was more of a warrant-based forensic level search where whoever was searching, the team searching, were looking for evidence of foul play, and they were giving no benefit of the doubt to Brad. Whereas with the first search, they probably were. They weren't looking at him so specifically yet. Now, in most cases like this, families kind of circle the wagons. They make excuses or they stay silent. I'm not faulting families. I'm saying that people don't know how to handle this, how much to say, how much not to say, especially Brad's family, So we've had plenty of stories where a husband or wife or family member has been a suspect and it ended up that they didn't do it. But their family members, well, it goes both ways. Their family members sometimes rally around them, sometimes turn on them. More often than not, I think that we've seen that family members will defend their family member until the end, sometimes even past the end. Like once it's been proven that they did do something nefarious, sometimes family members still support them and don't believe that. But not this time, not Brad Simpson's family. Because while Brad was out dumping bags and hiding saws, his brother Barton Simpson was already talking to police. Barton told investigators that Brad called him on October 8th, one day after reporting Suzanne missing. The call wasn't frantic, it wasn't confused, it was an apology. Barton said that Brad called and said, quote, "I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused." Which, at least on the surface, does not seem like the kind of thing you say when your wife is missing and you're trying to find her. That's the kind of thing you say when you already know she's not coming back. And Barton didn't stop there. He gave a public statement, and it was pretty unlike things that we usually hear in cases like this. So Brad's own brother, not brother-in-law, but own brother, said, "We ask him to accept responsibility and place himself at the mercy of the court. It is our sincere hope that through accountability, healing can begin for everyone affected by this devastating loss. It's unimaginable that anyone would withhold cooperation when a loved one's life may be in jeopardy. For Brad to refuse to assist, even if it poses some risk for himself, demonstrates a lack of empathy for those he claims to love." Well said, Barton. He wasn't just speaking for himself when he made these statements. He was speaking for Brad and Suzanne's youngest kids because Barton and his wife stepped up to care for Brad and Suzanne's youngest children. And Suzanne's family was also speaking out. Her sister Teresa, her mother Barbara. Teresa had actually been in Hong Kong on like a once in a lifetime trip that she had been planning forever. When she heard what was happening back in the States, she dropped everything and immediately flew back to San Antonio. She said, "When I heard she was missing, I knew she was gone. Suzanne doesn't go missing." Suzanne's mom, Barbara, said, "When she got back from that dinner, she called me and told me what Brad had done. I came up with a plan for her to move in with me. I never even got to tell her." Even Brad and Suzanne's children, the older ones, made their position heartbreakingly clear. On Instagram, Chandler Simpson, the eldest daughter, wrote, "My mom was a victim of abuse from my father. My father took my mother's life in a state of rage and control. I will forever speak as her voice until she is found." That takes some real strength and bravery. I mean, and clarity to be able to, it's just a lot. You know, they haven't found Suzanne. So for this family to be, they just know. They just know. And sometimes you just know. And through all of this, all of these statements, all of the Brad's family, Suzanne's family, both of them talking to the press, their kids talking to the press and the public, Brad said nothing. Nothing. Silent. By November 7th, 2024, exactly 1 month after Suzanne vanished, they charged Brad with murder. So initially, remember, he was only charged with, I don't want to scroll back and see, some type of assault and concealment. He was charged not with homicide, not with murder until now. Till November 7th, he was charged with homicide. Now, remember, there was no body, but you don't always need a body to prove murder. It is inherently more difficult, but you don't have to have it. You just have to prove two things: that the person is no longer alive and that someone else is responsible for that. And with Suzanne, that evidence was it was really piling up. Her DNA was found on the saw, phone records proving that she made it home, or at least her phone made it home, surveillance video of Brad dumping trash bags and cement, a confession that he assaulted her on his phone, their daughter as a witness. On December 3rd, a grand jury agreed with all of this. Brad was indicted on multiple felony charges, including first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, tampering with a human corpse, and possession of a prohibited weapon, that AK-47. His initial bail back in October when he was arrested was 2 million total. After the grand jury indictment, his bail was raised to 3 million in response to the upgraded charges and the accumulation of additional evidence. His trial is scheduled to begin sometime in 2025. It has not yet. Now, I saw some conflicting information on this, and a lot of times I don't believe it has started yet. It was supposed to start in March, then in April. Here we are in May, almost June, and I believe it has not yet. So there's some high stakes to this trial, though, because prosecutors aren't able to say how Suzanne was killed, where Suzanne was killed, or what happened to her body. Without a body, they don't know any of those things. And those are obviously very key components of proving someone's murder and proving that this, person did it. It's a challenge. And in Texas, apparently, I was reading about how juries take their job hopefully everywhere, but in Texas, it's a very serious thing. It's a very serious thing everywhere. So I don't even know why I included that in here. But, uh, you know, proving reasonable doubt for this, like, that's a high bar to clear. Like, there's a lot of reasonable doubt without a body, without a murder weapon, without a cause of death. But prosecutors are staying positive because they believe that they have the truth on their side and a mountain of circumstantial evidence that is pretty overwhelming. I mean, it may as well be forensic evidence. Maybe not quite, but it's a lot. And then Brad finally decided to speak in court. He said he wanted to talk to the judge, and so he told the judge, I don't think Suzanne is missing at all. I think she's probably in Austin with her sorority sisters, just like taking a break. They were married 22 years. She's been officially reported missing. There's flyers everywhere. Her family, her friends trying to get a hold of her. Her cell phone's gone. No money, like that's delusional. It's a delusional thing to even say, honestly. The only thing I feel like he could say that I could, it's still ridiculous, but that I could like, okay, fine, is if he was like, she was kidnapped. Because then maybe she wouldn't have her phone. She wouldn't have any money. She wouldn't be able to be in contact. That's so not what happened, though. Now, I must say, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. These are all just my opinions. Yeah, as of May 2025, Brad Simpson remains in custody at Bexar County Jail, awaiting trial for the murder of his wife. There has been various court appearances, various motions. His lawyers tried to dismiss part of the indictment in April. That was denied, but no trial has started yet. So the prosecution is still continuing to gather and review evidence, and a specific trial date has not been publicly announced that I could find as of yesterday. So this is definitely one that we will continue to keep an eye on. Suzanne was more than just a name in the headline. She was, as I said in the beginning, a mother, a friend, a professional, and a woman who deserved safety and respect. And her story, I think, is a stark reminder of the horrifying dangers of domestic violence and the importance of speaking out against it. There are numbers for the National Domestic Violence Hotline and website in the show notes, as they always are. And hopefully, bringing more awareness to this case will honor Suzanne's memory. And her parents and her family are, from what I understand, very heavily involved in advocating for domestic violence victims and supporting local shelters in hopes of honoring Suzanne's memory. Suzanne Simpson tried to warn the world. Her story is a reminder to listen to the whispers, the warnings, and the red flags. No one should ever have to feel unsafe in their own home. And that is it for today. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Death by Southwest. Hope you guys stay safe, look out for each other, and thoughts and prayers are with Suzanne's family, friends, children, and hope that justice is served for her whenever that trial takes place. As always, if you are liking listening to Death by Southwest, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, come say hi on Instagram or TikTok. And my apologies again that this is a day late. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. All right. Thank you for listening. I love you so much. And if you've been here since the beginning of this episode and you heard me talking about losing my job again and are dying to know more, I go fully into detail on Patreon. I think I was trying to work it out for myself as well. So, and thank you to all of my lovely, wonderful, kind, generous patrons who support the show. You all support the show by listening. They support the show with a little bit of money. And in a time when I've lost my job again, I'm feeling especially grateful to that. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I love you. I love you. Goodbye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, "Good night and good luck."